Duval. Welcome to Believe in Jaguars. I'm Bucky Brooks. What's up, Duval? This is Believe in Jags, hosted by Bucky Brooks, yours truly, former number 22 of the Jaguars way back in the day. But what I'm really here to do is to be the guy that lets you know what's going on with the Jacksonville Jaguars, the here and now in anticipation of training camp. But before we get into that, let's make sure we pay off our sponsor. Bet Online is the number one source for all of your sports betting needs this season, from baseball, golf, soccer, right up to the top fights in UFC and MMA and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while games are being played. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our 150 plus slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. And so, since we're talking about the game starting here, we're going to finish up our series of previewing all of the positions for the Jacksonville Jaguars as we think about training camp and the positions that are really under the scope. I think the positions that we're talking about today are two of the most intriguing positions on the squad: linebacker and secondary, the defensive backfield. Look, the Jaguars will kind of make it or break it based on the performances of these guys in the back end. And when we talk about the back end, we're talking about the back seven. We're talking about the linebackers, which are the midway to the defense, and then the secondary, which really is being asked not to let the ball fly over their head. But before we get to the secondary, let's talk about this linebacker core and how important it's going to be for this defense. Ryan Nielsen takes over the defense, and look, he wants to put an onus on the defense to get lined up, play fast. He wants these linebackers to be see ball, get ball defenders. And for me, I think it is the perfect combination of scheme and player coming together. When we talk about the scheme, look, the defense is making a change, going from like an odd front to a four-man front, whether they play over or even or whatever. They're going to have four guys in front. They're going to have two linebackers on most downs, and then they can play nickel coverage around it. And when I think about what they would like to do, they want to be a little more multiple in terms of utilizing the linebackers. I talked about being two linebackers, but look, on early downs, they may have three linebackers on the field, but they're going to change what they ask some of their linebackers to do. This year, we'll see a true Sam linebacker, where we have a linebacker that plays at the line of scrimmage. He'll put his hands on the tight end. He may be added on as a rusher. And when I think about the Sam position, I think is a perfect fit for Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd, entering his third year, former first-round pick, coming out of Utah. There were a lot of expectations about him when he was taken at the bottom of the first round. I'll be honest, like my personal opinion, I felt like he was miscast in a role that wasn't necessarily what he was asked to do at Utah. When you watched him play at Utah, he was an at the line of scrimmage player. He was a guy who did a little bit of everything. Rushed the passer, was a hit, run, and chase player at the line of scrimmage on the run game. Occasionally would drop back and make plays in coverage. But look, most of his game was spent going forward. See ball, get ball, go make it happen. Well, we've heard Ryan Nielsen talk about bringing that Sam linebacker back. And even though they were playing musical chairs on the back end over the course of the offseason, my expectation is Devin Lloyd is going to line up at Sam linebacker, and he's going to get after it. When you watch Devin Lloyd, one, it's obvious that he's gained some weight. He's packed on the muscle. He appears to be very, very comfortable. When you listen to his conversation with the press, he's very comfortable in terms of what he's being asked to do, and maybe even hinted at being unleashed a little bit as a pass rusher. When you think about the potential pass rush, and we talked about on the last podcast, Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen and Eric Armstead, what we haven't factored in is what this pass rush could look like if you give Devin Lloyd more opportunities to get after the passer as opposed to playing in coverage. Final season at Utah, when he was Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, I want to say he had 8 or 9 sacks coming off the edge at Utah. He has the ability and the skills to get it done. Will Ryan Nielsen give him that opportunity? I'm saying yes, but we'll see how that plays out in training camp. But look, the linebacker core is more than just a blue chip linebacker that we talked about in Devin Lloyd, who you expect to make that jump. You got a tackling machine in the middle in Foye Oluokun. And people will look at the numbers and the stats and they'll say, like, hey, tackle production doesn't always translate into stellar performance. But I'm saying it does when it comes to Foye. Foye has always been amongst the tackle leaders since he entered the league. And watching him play, man, the instincts, the awareness, high football IQ. All of those things show out on tape. Being field level, I would tell you that his most important role with the Jaguars is he's the traffic cop. He is the guy that gets everyone lined up. He is the one that is kind of the linchpin between the defensive front and the secondary, and his communication is key to their success. He also operates with a level of professionalism where he can raise the standard on the defense in terms of the standard in terms of their preparation, the eventual performance, even their practice habits. He plays a lot. He has a huge role in making sure that he sets the standard for the team. I can tell you that there was a frustration around the team in terms of the way that they prepared for games last season and how maybe some of the sloppiness that took place on the practice field leaked and filtered into the games because the team did consistently play well. I think that changes, right? I think it changes obviously from the defensive coordinator coming over Ryan Nielsen, demanding more from the team. But I think it's the ability of Ryan Nielsen and Foye Oluokun to be in lockstep. Even though we talk about the game being different at the pro level, the one thing that we know is the Mike linebacker is an extension of the coaching staff on the field. And the relationship that Oluokun has with Nielsen is critical between the defensive play caller and the guy who barks out the signals for the defense, that the green dot player, the one that has the device in the helmet. They needed to be on the same page. And I can just sense in being around the team during the offseason, these guys are getting closer and closer to being on the same page. And when that happens, man, the fun really, really starts happening because Foye Oluokun is a guy that from tackle to tackle within the box, he's a tackling machine. He kind of is a vacuum cleaner when it comes to sucking up all the plays that could happen. He cleans it up. He makes it happen. Really excited to see him in this defense because he has a chance to be a guy that finally moves from like that fringe consideration as an elite player to being a guy that we talk about being a Pro Bowl player because he plays so well at Mike. Chad Muma is probably, I would say, the most valuable piece of the defensive puzzle in terms of his versatility, his ability to play multiple roles on the second unit, whether multiple roles as a spot starter, a fill-in player, or whatever, whether it's Will, whether it's Mike, whether it's Sam. Muma has a unique skill set that allows him to play all of those positions. And as we've watched this team operate with the musical chairs principle throughout the offseason, we've seen Muma play Will. We've seen him play Mike. We've seen him put his hands on tight ends at Sam. I would say his value comes in the ability to play all three spots, but not only to play him, but to play him well when he gets his opportunity. Coming into the league, he was regarded as a high IQ, instinctive player from Wyoming. Look, he just kind of followed the footsteps of Logan Wilson, and we've seen the kind of player that Logan Wilson has been for the Cincinnati Bengals. I would say in evaluating Muma, I felt like he has similar skills. And going to a four-man front with maybe a base linebacker package where you put three linebackers on the field might be an opportunity for the Jaguars to get Chad Muma on the field more. People are talking about his inability to kind of play well in space, but I will say this. High IQ player who has the toughness and physicality that you look for, ultimately make or break the defense, because last year we saw the issues on defense primarily were the secondary not communicating well, not being able to avoid the big play. And because they were victimized by the big play, it really changed stylistically how the Jaguars wanted to play. One of the issues that you have from my vantage point was the team didn't appear to have the communication and trust to play really well in zone coverage. And then in man-to-man, they just weren't athletic enough to be able to hold some of the more explosive offenses when it came to being able to match up mano a mano on the perimeter. This year, there's more optimism. They will be able to play a style that leans a little more towards man-to-man, to play in a defense that is a little, I would say, simpler, that would allow them not to have as much thinking so they can play faster and freer on the perimeter, and that should produce better results. Now, the key to it will be how quickly can these guys master the techniques on the perimeter that allows them to take away the layups while not giving up the big plays. And so, you've heard Ryan Nielsen talk in pressers about nothing cheap, nothing deep. Well, that means they want to take away the cheap throws, like the little at the line of scrimmage throws, the bubble screens and tunnel screens and those things, while also preventing the ball from flying over the top of the defense. Easy to say, harder to execute. But when you watch the team operating the offseason program. They did a really good job of kind of putting it together. What they would like to do is be a little snugger in coverage, a little more nose to nose in their pre-snap alignments, and really force quarterbacks to have to make tight window throws. When I look at the personnel, to me, there is a match between the personnel and the style that you want to employ. When I look at the personnel, Tyson Campbell and Ronald Darby, to me, are the initial guys that have run out there as starters. Tyson Campbell has an opportunity to move into the conversation as a blue chip player, one of the better players in the league. Does that warrant Pro Bowl consideration? He ultimately determined if he's a guy that is an elite player. But I would say physically, he has the attributes to be one of those upper echelon corners. Long arms, he's fast enough to run with anybody and everybody on the perimeter. Doesn't have what I would call premier ball skills, but when you play a lot of man-to-man, breakups are more likely to happen than interceptions because your back is to the quarterback and you're going to see the ball late in terms of your reaction. Tyson Campbell can play that. That's what he did a lot in Georgia. And so, look, I would expect to see him ranked near the top of the league in breakups if he's playing at his best. And Ronald Darby, you have a junkyard dog on the other side. The veteran player has been in the league for a long time, super scrappy at the point of attack. He's going to make you work on the perimeter. He may not necessarily be as skilled or as technical as some of the corners in the league, but what he lacks in technique, he makes up in tenacity. He is a scrappy dude. When I talk about an A-level competitor, he's going to make you work to get open on the perimeter. If he can maintain his technique and not necessarily get his handsy the first 5 yards and just kind of stay on top and force guys to catch the ball going back to the quarterback, he will be doing exactly what the coaching staff wants. He also gives this team some of that veteran savvy and experience that Doug Peterson may have felt like was lacking a season ago. Because Darby has been in the locker room with Doug Peterson, he was with the Philadelphia Eagles when Doug Peterson was there. He knows how Doug wants to operate. He's another voice, another veteran voice that can raise the professionalism, but also help this team begin to meet some of those expectations that happen when you're making a postseason push at the end of the year. And when you get into the postseason, that playoff experience will matter from Ronald Darby. So Campbell and Darby on the perimeter, you feel great about. But then you have kind of the unknowns, but I would say not the unknowns, but the unheralded guys that can emerge as players. And it starts with the young guys, right? So Buster Brown, Montarik Buster Brown, will have an opportunity to come back and continue to compete. He's been a guy that has played in a nickel role, not necessarily in the slot, but been that third corner that has had to get on the field. You like the fact that he has grown and grown tremendously as a player over his time, and he should be a guy that is vying for time. But it's a very competitive situation on the perimeter when it comes to which corner is going to be the third corner that they use. Two other guys that I think could merit consideration as the nickel or the third corner. One would be Jarrian Jones. Jarrian Jones coming from Florida State. Like the expectation is he is going to be a nickel player. He has experience playing in the slot. He was really good playing in the slot at Florida State. He is competitive. He kind of brings that swagger and energy that you like. It's a matter of putting him in the best position, not only for himself, but for the team. Is that outside? Is that inside? Is that a combination based on matchups? Jones will allow us to make that determination based on how he handles it in training camp, but more importantly, how does he handle it in preseason games? Is he better on the outside? Is he better on the inside? If he can play at a high level, it can be one of the top 12, meaning the starting 11 plus that extra corner you consider a starter. If he's one of the top 12, man, you feel great. The round pick comes over, has that quality and that experience doing it. So you want to give him every opportunity to win the job. And DeAndre Prince, what you're talking about is a guy that may be the third corner or the fourth corner, depending on packaging, nickel or dime. What you like about him is he fits the style. He's long. He's super athletic and explosive. He appears to be a guy that's very coachable, just given the ball of clay that he is as a prospect. Man, you would like to take someone with those attributes and just teach them how to play with the right technique, how to play and stay on top in coverage, and then how to challenge and compete people. The athleticism, the explosiveness, all this stuff you see. You see it in individual drills. You see it when he has an opportunity to play in team drills and one-on-ones and those things. But now it's about putting together a consistent level of performance that allows the coaching staff to trust that as a young player, you can go out there and handle your business in the rotation. For me, I think Prince might be more of an option after the midpoint of the season. And the reason why I say that is because give him an opportunity to go through the preseason, give him an opportunity to practice and play on teams early in the year, continue to work and refine his game. Then by the last half of the season, when injuries begin to kind of take hold, or sometimes you kind of settle in and you have guys that you do or you don't like, maybe then is where Prince may enter the rotation as someone who has a lot of potential and a lot of athleticism and a lot of intriguing traits to work with. The safety position, and I think the safety position is one where you may have a star emerge at that position. And that star that I'm talking about is Andre Cisco. Andre Cisco is someone who has made a ton of plays for the Jaguars since he's had an opportunity to jump into the lineup. But this might be the first time that he actually gets to play in a system that is like built for him, with a coach that's going to encourage him to make the plays that are there to be made, but to use situational awareness to make sure he doesn't compromise the integrity of the defense, playing on an educated guess or hunch. In Cisco, I think you have to give him that freedom because he was so good taking the ball away in college. And look, I know he had that knee injury his final season, but talk about a guy who had 13 interceptions at Syracuse and someone who was all over the field in terms of tracking and taking the ball away. We've already seen it in Jacksonville. He's been able to do some of those things where he takes the ball away. He makes critical plays when they're able to kind of set the traps, where he is able to kind of bait quarterbacks into poor throws. And I'll be honest, he catches the ball well. Interceptions are typically derivatives of overthrown passes, tips and overthrows, and where he's in the right spot. If he just plays his role while having a little bit of the freedom to go and chase plays based on what he's seen in the film room, Andre Cisco is going to be one of those guys that kind of backdoors into Pro Bowl consideration because he's talented and he's a ball hawk. He just has to put it on display for 17 games this season. Darnell Savage and Andrew Wingert are, look, two guys that we want to keep an eye on because you don't know how the secondary is going to play out. The coaches have talked about just kind of not only having an open competition, but they're going to put the best 5 or the best 6 defensive backs on the field in any given situation. Well, when I look at the veterans, Savage and Wingert, like to me, they kind of factor into that conversation based on what they've accomplished in the league. And for Wingert, based on what he's done for the Jaguars since day one. And watching Dewey play, I think he's underrated in terms of what he means to the Jaguars as a glue guy. He is someone that keeps the unit together. Super smart, super instinctive, great communication skills. When you have Foyer Luakon and Dewey on the field, a lot of communication is being exchanged between players. And a lot of times you don't see a lot of busts because they appear to have everybody on the same page. For Dewey, his value comes to the team in terms of being that player, the traffic cop, the communicator, the one who knows every part of the defense, and he relays the necessary information to his teammates. That's why I believe he's going to ultimately end up being the starter because there's comfort in knowing that at least one guy knows what everyone is doing, and he's going to make sure that everyone is lined up right. Darnell Savage is someone that you anticipate playing a big role, but he has enough versatility to occupy a few different roles for the Jaguars. He can be your traditional safety. He can play in the deep middle. He can come down and play over the tight end and play in the box and be a contributing and functional run defender. He also can go out in the slot and work and live in a defense that maybe employs a little more zone to man-to-man when you have a body like Darnell Savage operating in the slot. Regardless, his instincts, his awareness, the experience that he had in terms of logging significant reps and minutes throughout his time with the Packers, he's going to be a key vet that you can lean on when they have those high-level conversations in the back end with Tyson Campbell and Andre Cisco and those guys leading the way. Well, he can jump in and make contributions based on his experience and what he's seen. And if he improves the consistency of his tackling, where he's a reliable, dependable player on the perimeter in space, it's going to be hard to keep him off the field because he's one of the smarter players on the roster, on the unit, and he gives them that veteran savvy and experience that you look for and that you really need when you kind of make the dash for the cash the last half of the season trying to get into the postseason. I saved a player who, look, man, some will say, like, you saved the best for last, but I would say he is someone who a lot of people have high hopes for but it's about him finding a role that really works for his talents. And that's Antonio Johnson. Antonio Johnson, former 5th-round pick, jumped on the field, got into the nickel situation, made some plays. You thought that he made so many plays that he would naturally transition to safety. Maybe it still happens for him, but he's someone who played the star position, the nickel slot position, his entire time, and in college, and then even last season for the Jaguars, he came in and played in the nickel, made some plays in space. Is he good enough to play man-to-man as the Jaguars kind of transition from being maybe a more zone-based team to a man team? Is he good enough to stay with the 4th receiver or the tight end and man-to-man? Can he go out there on occasional island and deal with the number 2 or number 3 that is positioned in the slot? How well does he play in those situations could ultimately determine the role that the Jaguars carve out for him. That said, he was a terrific prospect. He showed promise a season ago, but now he's dealing with a more veteran, a more experienced secondary. Can he find a way to kind of carve out a role that works for him while also complementing all the things that everyone else in the back end does? Overall, I think there should be a lot of optimism over this defense. I'm not going to sit there and proclaim this defense to be like a top 10 defense, but I think they have the potential to be exactly what the Jaguars need them to be based on what the offense is. If this team can finish in the upper echelon, the top 15 or so of defenses, and maybe makes a push to be a top 10 defense, the Jaguars are going to be in the conversation to be not only in the playoff mix, but maybe to swipe the division near the end of the season. When it comes to some of these other guys that are available and ready to play on the second level, they need these guys to be able to kind of make not only the contributions, but they need to be steady Eddie players, guys that are reliable and dependable. If they are reliable and dependable, and you can hold them accountable and they come through by just being where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, Jaguars going to have a chance on defense to be really, really good. Hopefully, that's what turns out, because this team has high hopes. This team has title aspirations. But before you can win the title, you got to win the division. And the only way you can win the division is by playing really, really good defense, particularly on the back end. So that's the pod for the day. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment. Hit me on Twitter at Bucky Brooks. I guess I should call it X now, at Bucky Brooks. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe to all the Believe podcasts. It's really important that we get your opinion, your feedback, so we can figure out to give you what you want when you need it. Check out the latest offerings on the Believe Network on Fubu. Also, check us out on YouTube. So many great things that we're doing. We want to make sure that we meet you and give you what you need and what you want, while also expanding the community. So remember, tell a friend to tell a friend what's going on with the Jaguars. Believe in Jaguars is a top podcast. Let's make sure we continue to grow and expand it as we have more fun with the season on the horizon. So I'm Bucky Brooks. This is Believe in Jaguars. Until next time, I will talk to you.